Ladies and gentlemen, this is Eric Mashinsky with the Gold Investment Letter. Today is Wednesday, the 17th of September. I've got a few things to zero in with you on a little bit more than normal in terms of some actual numbers and comps, what to expect on one of our core positions like THM/ITH, International Tower Hill Mines. That one I want to just get into some bread and butter numbers because of some of the research that I've done. I was looking into some of the other development stage companies and looking at, what do we really have here for upside potential? And I think you'll find that very, very interesting. Also, I'm not going to get into it too much today. I think a press release will be out tomorrow, Friday at the latest. Some of you may be wondering about the Phenom Resources private placement. Very small. Nobody's getting any. Even premium and elite folks not happening. And that's even if people were involved for quite a while. You'll get a sense, and I'll explain to you why we did the placement, a small one like this, to top off the bank account before restarting up the Crescent Valley drilling, and why, who got what, and why it was private. It's a good thing, very good thing, because of the lead investor in that round is a powerhouse. He's a friend of mine, and he's very much a great guy to get a little bit pregnant in the deal for moving that forward. And Phenom will come back to the front of the line when appropriate. I don't like to talk about, you know, crap that is way in the future, or keep telling you a story over and over that isn't yet the right time to do so. Today, what I am going to do is I'm going to do that on a couple of things. Metallis, where I have actual rocks. Why do I have these gloves on? I have rocks from the Livengood Project, which I went to Boise week before last to meet Fiore Alaperte from Metallis, and the owner of the actual property, generational owner, Dan Yankee. And because we had flash floods, I'm bringing up Metallis because of this. Any of you that don't own it, don't know what the hell I'm talking about, or if you do, I think this stock is going to be, it has the potential, very high potential, to be the hottest new discovery play in North America, and maybe even in the world, with their Livengood deposit in Idaho that is right now being drilled, hole number 6. It's a 14-hole plan. They are 21, 22 miles away from Perpetua Resources, which is the Stibnite project, and they have a 6 million ounce, very good looking gold deposit that has basically been funded and pushed through permitting because of their byproduct of antimony, which is a desperate situation for the US government, and really any government that would actually like to be able to defend your nation. Antimony is, what they call the war metal. It is required for virtually all different types of bullets and ammunition, many other defense measures. And China controls it, and they cut off exports to the world, um, this year, along with germanium and gallium. And this is a very big problem. The reason they picked those three, I believe, is because we ended up kicking them out of having the ability to get the most powerful chips from NVIDIA, and gave them, a lower range, lower speed, lower target access to computer chips, to data chips, to compute. With AI and the race going on there, China didn't like that very much. So what they've been doing and planning on for well over 2 decades, I've seen this coming for over a decade and a half, and it's now coming to fruition, which is China launched a strategy, a covert strategy, decades ago, when they decided to start to buy up many, if not all, of the production of critical minerals and rare earth elements, magnet metals included, not only with production, where they've gone to Africa, locked up things there, but partners like Russia, look at antimony, for example, Tajikistan and some other random countries do produce, it's not a immaterial amount, but when you look at just China and Russia, you're over 70%. But the issue is that China has a monopoly, a lock on processing this stuff before sending it out to whoever they will be on their list in terms of getting the actual finished antimony product. And so that gives them, on antimony, for example, it's more than an 87% market share. We don't produce any of it here, although we have it in our soil. Perpetua is moving at the speed of light if they can. What people don't understand is that even with that situation, where you've had billions of dollars in loans and grants, and even earlier on, the Pentagon gave them 60 million bucks just to expedite their permitting process in Idaho. They could go as fast as humanly possible, but that mine, even though it's approved and getting funded very quickly from government interest to build a gold mine, just to get the secondary metal, which is the antimony, which is critical. It's a critical mineral. And I don't think that thing's going to be producing and online for at least 4 years. They say sooner, it could be over 5. By the time you end up, when you get a discovery, this goes for virtually every mineral you can think of, but certainly when it comes to critical minerals and rare earths, which have more complicated metallurgy and all different types of engineering challenges and things of that nature. But those, coupled with, even just call it gold or silver, by the time you have an exploratory drill hole that goes in to potentially identify an economic future ore body that could become a mine, the time between when you find that first hole and when you're actually pulling stuff out of the ground and have a mine is being generous. It's 15 years on average. It's more like over 20. So there are a lot of supply chain problems. And the reason that this is very interesting for us is because both the stocks I'm going to talk about today, Metallis and Tower Hill, have big antimony elements to their story in different ways. So, for example, with Metallis, I went out to Idaho the week before last to go look at the Greyhound project, which is it's about a 5-hour ride from Boise, a little bit over. It depends on the weather. We actually happen to have a flash flood warning that particular day. And before we started leaving Boise, I said, hey, Fiore, you've been to this place before. How sketchy can it get, especially if you have a lot of rain? And he said, well, I've gone there when there wasn't bad weather. And there's a couple of turns where I would just highly recommend you just close your eyes, because you're on the end of a cliff. Some of these places are not the easiest to get to, but Metallis is now on hole number 6. They've been drilling, they've got their camp, and things are rocking and rolling. But we ended up calling the camp, and one of the geologists, basically, I said, hey, if we're going to come up there, we want to make sure we can make it between the town of Stanley and the actual camp. And he's like, yeah, I was a little worried for you guys today if you end up coming up here and you don't have a chainsaw in the car. There are fallen trees and other obstacles to get up here. I'm like, chainsaw? What are you talking about? So we didn't go to the actual Livengood. I'm sorry, the Greyhound project. However, the day prior, I was able to meet with Dan Yankee. The Yankee family has been around for generations in Idaho. They're a very prominent, well-known family. And it was very interesting, basically going for the day and touring everything from their massive factories to the museum that they have with all of these like crazy, 100-year-old cars, and just really interesting stuff. And they're a bit of an eclectic family, I believe. And Dan is the individual. He had a son there. It's closer to my age, but Dan runs the show with a lot of his stuff. He's the one who signed the deal with Fiore to get us the Greyhound project. And he also has a gold mine about 15 minutes, 20 minutes outside of Boise that he runs himself. So part of that trip, we went to the gold mine, and it's a small operation, but it is a very real running operation that produces gold. And I was asking him a little bit about the numbers, but he has all these tailings, and he's got probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 employees that are walking around doing different things. And I said, look, Dan, you've obviously, you own a lot of land. You've been in metals and mining. Your family's been involved in it. Why the hell would you give up Greyhound if you know how to get this stuff out of the ground, as you obviously do here with your smaller project? Why? And he basically told me, look, I'm not getting any younger. And the Greyhound, sorry if I keep saying Livengood, the Greyhound property is too big for me. It's another level and another ball game. And so luckily what ended up happening, which I thought was very cool, is that even though we were going the next day, and we none of us knew that we weren't going to make it to Greyhound, he pulled out a rock. It was a very big rock that was from Greyhound that he said, look, I'm going to crack off some rock for you guys to take as a souvenir. This is, and it looks like it certainly could be, or it is, at least 200 ounce per ton silver, okay, in these rocks. And we know from some of the work that Metallis has done on the surface and soil sampling and chips, they've had, not only some mega silver assays, but also antimony in the 0.5% to 4.5% antimony grades. It's called stibnite antimony. It's the same thing. And when you look at Perpetua, the reason this Perpetua is important, it's important for both me talking about Metallis and Tower Hill, and you'll hear why in a second. But this deal has been a massive success story. When I first ran into it in 2020, this was a floundering play that had all kinds of permitting issues and cost overruns and challenges, but it was owned over 30% by John Paulson. And John Paulson also owns over 30% of International Tower Hill. And John Paulson's protege and right-hand man, Marcelo Kim, is the chairman of the board of both of those companies. And I'll get into that in a minute, but Perpetua has gone from sub $100 million market cap to now pushing 2 billion US. And they are, they've got a ton of backing, financing, and everything else. In fact, if you look at Paulson, some of you don't know who he is. You should find out, because he's behind our Tower Hill play. And I think Perpetua is one of the top two. There is a better one, but one of the top two companies. I've already notified them that if we go through this drill program at Metallis and hit on what they think we're going to start popping on, which, Perpetua has, they have a gold and antimony asset, but the antimony, which is large, granted it's large, but it's 0.06% grade. We're pulling out stuff at surface that's over 4% at Metallis, and you're getting crazy silver intercepts along with high grade gold over a gram, zinc, and the antimony. Very interesting. And so for a company of this size that's down the street, basically, if they start to see that this Greyhound project strategically would be a fit, I just don't, I don't see how they wouldn't want to make a bid. And we're not giving it up for at least $100 million. So I wouldn't even know if that would do the trick. But for example, and I'm going to show you the rock here in a second, which can, sometimes speak volumes, other times, you just don't know until you go through the lab. But Metallis has a 22.5 US dollar market capitalization right now. So call it, 4 to 5x if we were to get $100 million offer on this deal. Why do I say that? Is it realistic? Is it in the ballpark? I just think this thing could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's a question of, do you want to flip it quicker and take something lower? But I'm not in Metallis for 30, 40, 50%, guys. I mean, we funded this deal. We got back in. And by the way, I just want to mention we have a call tonight, Q&A for elite and premium members. If you want to join, you would have had access to the fact that we have a venture list of very low cap stuff that I had reinitiated Metallis at 4.5 cents about 18 months ago, which today is, it just hit 40, I believe, yesterday. And we also led the financing. I believe we did a bit more than the company's contacts and the 13-cent placement with a full warrant. And then we just did the last one to fund the drilling program, which was at 16 or 17 cents with a full warrant. And you're not going to get any of that action unless you're an elite member and sometimes premium members, but you will get this information on stuff like with THM, for example. I gave the elite members nearly 2 months of not constant, but every other day, every week, different parts of that story when it was at 50 cents US, just saying, look, guys, build a position, make it meaningful. Here's why. And then I'm making phone calls on the side saying, you got to make sure that you're buying this and that you make it a core position right now. Trust me. You're not going to get any of that type of stuff, at the free e-letter. And we have so many more picks. But in any event, I'm able to talk a little bit more freely and about more opportunities there. It's very well worth it right now because we're in a bull market. And even with Metallis, let me show you some of the rock. And then I'm going to talk to you about what I think could happen with the stock and why this thing could get crazy fast. So, it's hard to tell with stuff like this. I'm just going to see if I can flash around. It never does justice. It never does justice with video or photos, but you can see the glistening here. Actually, it's this part right there. See that silver popping out of there? You've got the same thing here on this rock. These were blasted open with a hammer. Look at all that silver. I mean, the glistening is there and all over the place. We're not going to see necessarily the antimony or the gold. That's going to come in the assays. And then you even have this small one, which I keep around the living room. There you go. There's some silver sparkles. But Dan Yankee, who knows this project, inside and out, he said, look, this is 200 ounce per ton rock. And I believe him. And he knows what is what, because they've been going to Greyhound for a period of time and running certain programs, but nobody has ever done a modern drill program like they're doing right now, which is going to go down 1,000+ feet in various areas like the Bulldog, which I think it was the highest grade silver that I've ever seen reported. This is going back over 100 years when this was, I think, the highest grade silver mine in the United States with, 238,000 grams per ton silver. It was crazy. And they're doing this on the surface with old school tools, picks and shovels, but it was so high grade, they were able to mine all that out. There's adits that are there. There's infrastructure. And we are now going to be going into a certain depth that I think is going to confirm some of the work that they've done. He's been able to sort of guide the company in a few different areas to more so ensure that we're going to have some really nice holes. And so what ends up happening in this market, if you have 100, 200, 300 ounce intercepts of a meter or two, along with showing that you can build out what would be 100 million ounce silver discovery with very, very high grades. And one thing that Dan had mentioned to me, he said, look, if we have 100 million ounces of silver here, it's not even in the top 15 silver projects in Idaho. It's not like it's that big of a stretch. And I thought that was interesting because he's right. And this Greyhound property is going to make us a fortune. That's my feeling. And so when you look at, for example, the reason I know these guys at Metallis, and Fiore and I have been tight, and he's the one who ended up giving us like a full warrant when normally he's very stingy with that stuff, is because we have a relationship going back to 2017. And I just wanted to highlight the fact that back in 17, we didn't have anywhere near as many subscribers as we do today, obviously. But there was a window there where we had a company called Garibaldi Resources, which many of you may remember, with Nickel Mountain, which looked like it was going to be a very interesting, very high grade nickel discovery. And right above them, literally bordering that, is the Kirkham property of Metallis. And so Garibaldi got the attention first. I ended up doing a little bit of a deeper dive and finding out about the Metallis story, which I said, this is going to go along with it, because if they've got, this type of massive sulfide nickel at Nickel Mountain, it's going to continue into clearly Metallis's property. Plus they have this copper gold trend and, other things up in the Golden Triangle that are very, very interesting. So if you think about this deal, I was looking through emails and some of the communication that I had back in 17. I ended up buying initially Metallis and recommending it at around 26 cents Canadian. And let me spare the suspense. Within, I believe it was like 6 weeks maybe or something, the stock hit $2.69 on massive volume. Garibaldi we also bought, and that thing went absolutely bonkers. But back in the day, that was like August of 2017, Metallis had a 7 million US market cap at that time. And this was from hyperbole and inferences about, being next door to what was going to be this great nickel discovery. And the thing just absolutely ripped. So I know these things can happen. They happen with us in premium and elite often. Okay. But what's going to happen with Metallis, where now we have this 22, $23 million market capitalization and we're drilling at Greyhound? I think, and this goes back to also, we have a lot of examples. This is why I'm pushing the premium elite service for you guys right now, because there's just we're in a bull market. That's the difference with all this. We're in a bull market. So, I'm pretty good at picking stuff and surviving and having, some 5, 10, 15 baggers, even during bear markets, so we don't get totally crushed. But in bull markets, it's just like a kid at a candy store. I mean, back in the day, I just remember, I was looking through the notes and looking at Dolly Varden, which, we were building positions in Dolly Varden back a long time ago. And then I'm going to move on here. That was like, I mean, it was probably 20 cents or something. It's 5.76 right now. Anyway, finding these things earlier and then taking a shot, but also doing it in a measured way. A $25 million market cap for Metallis is very, very cheap with what we think is going to happen. The real juice here, and I'm going to segue into THM, that people don't really understand. Number one, silver is going to begin. It already has begun, but it's going to trounce gold's performance going forward. I think we're going to probably see a doubling of upside in silver versus gold. So silver is going to be very, very hot, and silver companies, especially early on in a discovery like this could get wild. There are not a lot of silver plays, pure plays, production companies, exploration companies that have anything legitimate. This could be one of the hottest silver stocks in the marketplace, and we should start to find out whether that is a pipe dream or it's going to become true by somewhere in the end of October, early November, when the assays start to come out, which I think could happen even in 30 days. They're going to take 4 holes at a time from these different areas, and I know that they just finished 2 days ago number 5, and we're on to hole number 6 at the 1350 zone. And they want to go to the birdie zone. They have the bulldog, which they've done. So they're going to start sending in like 4 assays on rush. Could take 3 weeks, could take 6 weeks, but we're going to start getting actual drill results back. And I'm very excited because clearly this project has a ton of very high grade antimony, silver, gold, and zinc laying everywhere. We found it on the frickin' soil. It's a question of how deep does it go. And the antimony piece is important, and also something I'm going to mention with regard to THM. International Tower Hill has been an absolute gem for us in the sense that, and I've done this before, but like typically when you have, you get a bull market in something, it could be crypto, it could be mining stocks, whatever it is. You have your first phase of deals that start to rip and move, and then you have a second wave after that, a third wave after that. So one of my jobs is like, after we have things that are starting to hit, whether we're taking profits or whatever or not, is to start looking at what's the next wave. And one of the obvious things to do in this particular gold market has been clearly in the last 18 months when gold broke 2100. The gold producers, the large caps, are the ones that have gone to new highs and have done wonderfully well and outperformed a number of like the juniors, which some have not even seen much of a pulse yet, but some have, and some are starting to wake up. And I'm seeing it, and I know from many, many years of experience that the junior mining market is going to be a bull heaven where you need, and I just did an hour-long video for premium members that you can get your hands on if you want to join, about the fact that we have to switch our mindset from 4 years of I'll buy some, but I'm going to be able to get it cheaper, or I'll wait because it's going to go down, to averaging up. That's the game right now. And so with Tower Hill, we've seen this thing. I came in here in December, started to build a position, almost 2 months with elite members only, just encouraging them between 45 and like 58 cents US to just sock away a position. Once I felt like they were good, I went to the premium members, which was also about 2 months of buying and buying. And it did spike in that timeline and went into the 70s, hit 80 cents. And yeah, we were in the low to mid 70s. And then we ended up having a lucky pullback all the way back down to 50 in late March, early April. So this is getting into when I recommended it here to free e-letter members. You've had the ability to buy this thing. I had to buy up to, for a while, up to 65 cents US for the premium and elite members. And then I raised that a bit for the free members because the stock was starting to get absorbed and put into really good hands. And the fact is that with Tower Hill, we have 4 institutions that control over 70% of the float. John Paulson over 30%. Sprott has 9. Electrum, also a prolific, very smart group that is sticky money, has, I believe, 11%. And Kopernik Funds, a very large asset manager, has around 7 or 8%. And so, Paulson's been in this deal for 15 years. Every financing that I've seen in the last several years, they do it internally with their largest investors with no warrant and no discount to market. So they don't need anything from us. And in fact, because Paulson has gone through this process of turning Perpetua from a gangling, struggling to permit and drill and build out, the stibnite asset and mine in Idaho, with, you know, a sub $100 million market cap to a $2 billion market cap with $3+ billion on tap from loans and grants from the government entities. They know exactly what to do when Tower Hill finishes the study that they're doing right now, because if you dig into the feasibility, which is like, you know, 600 pages or something, this stuff gets very arduous. But back in the day, companies were penalized for finding antimony because of toxicity. Now it's a whole different story. So what they had to do, like Tower Hill, when they went through that feasibility with a third party, they had to avoid any of the stibnite and talk about what gold could be extracted, and how much of it could be impeded by the stibnite, which you didn't want to take out of the ground. Now they're doing a study about how much of this can you economically get out of the ground with the stibnite, and or it could improve even the gold recoveries. But really, just with the antimony, you're talking about, you know, millions of tons, definitely over 1 million tons. And there were grades. I talked with Carl Hanneman, the CEO, recently, and I still don't have the exact number, so don't quote me, but there were over 20% antimony grades at Livengood in Alaska. So what do we think is going to happen there? Let's just talk about gold and the valuation compared to the rest of the market. Vista has started to make a move with their Mount Todd asset in Australia. Good to see, you know, good to see that. You know, we've got some definite comps in this area, which is where I had gone for talking about building big positions after the producers have started to move and were, you know, the top performers early on. My logical conclusion was that then the money trickles down, a lot of hedge funds and things of that nature that can buy New York Stock Exchange, Amex slash NASDAQ slash Toronto Stock Exchange companies that are development stage, meaning they've already found millions or tens of millions of ounces of gold trading at really tiny valuations. They don't need to do any more exploration. They've already got the goods. The question is, where do you go from there on, you know, a potential bankable feasibility, funding a potential mine, getting a permit? Alaska had been questionable, but until this president, and the attitude on the ground in Alaska has markedly improved. And frankly, there are a bunch of mines that run out of Alaska. And so I like that state. I like Idaho a bit more. I mean, you look at what they've done with some of the state legislature about pushing permits through to get money going and in the ground. We need to do that on a national level, by the way, which some of us are working on, because we're even seeing hiccups in timing for drill permits in Nevada, because you just have, like, you know, one dude who's holding up 25-30% of all the applications in Nevada, which is insane. Anyway, we look at, this is why International Tower Hill is my favorite development stage play for leverage, because even though we've gone from 50 cents up to now we're, you know, $1.60 today, it looks like, and we've gone from sub just under 100 million market cap to just over 300 million on a market cap level. But let's look at the numbers and the comps. You've got Vista, which has 5.2 million ounces in reserves, and their resource is 10.6 million ounces. Okay. And so my notes might be a little bit messy here. Forgive me if I misspeak at all, but at $2,500 gold, Vista's got a $1.1 billion NPV at a 5% discount. They're trading today at about 240 million US on a market cap side, so a little bit less than Tower Hill. But Tower Hill has a 2.35 billion, well over twice that, at $2,500 gold. Net asset value, 5% discount. And they have 13.6 million ounces in the resource category, which is obviously larger than the 10.6 that Vista has. But then look at the reserves. They have over 9 million ounces of reserves. These are just categories of advancement and confidence you can have in what you think you have there and what companies say that they have there. The reserve category being the the highest validation level when you're getting ready to build a mine. So they have 9 million versus 5.2. And you're basically looking at a situation with Tower Hill that's trading at $36 per reserve gold ounce in the ground. Gold's that's 1% of the gold price, guys. 1% of the gold price. $24 per resource gold ounce out of the 13.6, trading at a $330 million valuation. So to get to the NAV, you're looking at Tower Hill going up eightfold, but this is at $2,500 gold. They're going to re-up these numbers to deal with our reality today, and the numbers are going to frickin' skyrocket. Even at $3,000 gold, 2,800, 3,200, 3,500. God forbid it's 4,000. I mean, this is going to be incredible in terms of some of these companies with their NAV and net present value on these deposits they've been working on literally for decades. It's going to be stuff that bigger companies, whether it's Kinross in Alaska, it's Hecla in Idaho, they're going to see that these deals can get taken. These can be mines, very, very profitable mines, and they're going to start buying out these entities. We've seen plenty of stuff. Like look at Artemis, for example. I hope I have that page. Yeah, 8 million ounce resource at Artemis. 8 million ounces of reserve, so less than THM, and 11.7 in gold resources, less than THM, about 10% less, but $5.3 billion market cap for Artemis. And I'm not touching on all of the important points, like we've even got situations like with regard to Tower Hill. They're the lowest strip ratio out of any development stage companies in America, 1.2, which is really going to help with economics when you get people and companies that are going to kick the tires to look at acquiring a potentially 20, 30-year mine life with 300,000 plus ounces a year, which are in the numbers for Tower Hill. Look at Nova Gold. So Nova Gold is a deal that John Paulson is also very deep in. And in fact, it's pretty shocking, but he ended up writing $1 billion check not long ago, like a month and a half ago, to buy Barrick's 50% of the Donlin asset in Alaska. So he's obviously got confidence in Alaska. And, the pockets there for John Paulson are extremely deep, obviously, when you're writing $1 billion check to buy out a major conglomerate for 50%. And they already owned a good chunk. He's essentially partnering up with the chairman, Thomas Kaplan, which, Nova Gold is trading at 150 per ounce of, gold resource there compared to what we're getting, $24. So 6x we'd have to look at. Perpetua, $265 per gold resource ounce. And THM, actually, those are reserves for Perpetua. We're at $36 per gold reserve ounce in the ground. And let me throw out. So we blow away when you start to break down anything from the only other play that I think, Vista has actually done really well recently. I bought stock at $1 not long ago, and so it has doubled really quickly. That's how these things are going to work. Tower Hill is going to end up, and it's gone in this absolutely perfect higher highs, higher lows trajectory that's absolutely sustainable. It does not get, more perfect than that. But what ends up happening is out of that channel, I believe Tower Hill's going to pop and explode above the top line and go to a whole other level that it will start to consolidate in. And we're seeing with like Vista what'll end up happening. I mean, you just need a fund or two or a big family office or like our group that decides, like with Howard Hill, we got to get all this stuff on the books that we can under $2, US, and the thing is gone. There's so much of it that's locked up. So for those of you that have missed Tower Hill, I don't think you've missed it. In fact, the part of the reason I'm doing this video, and you can take all of this with a grain of salt, because I'm an active consultant for International Tower Hill. The rationale behind that, it makes perfect sense to me. There's nothing nefarious, but you've got very smart people, smarter than I am, that run that company, that are much wealthier than me, that have backed that company. And I love the story, and I've known there's value there, but those guys don't know how to, you could give away water to somebody in the Mojave Desert, and they might get rejected on that. They're just not, marketing and promotionally based, which actually I like. They're all about just business and value creation and doing the right things. They're actually very conservative. But now with the antimony piece, keep something in mind. Do you think that the Paulson Group, along with the partner Electrum, they're working on this Dobbin thing, but they're huge shareholders in Perpetua, 21 miles away from Metallis. But their Alaska project with International Tower Hill, same chairman of the board, Perpetua and International Tower Hill, they've already come out and had some commentary in their corporate presentation about the antimony, and it looking preliminarily very good to be able to extract some of this stuff. I mean, antimony went from 8,000 a ton to over $60,000 a ton in the last year. I actually don't know where it is right now for the last few weeks. It might have gone down or up, but it's a very big problem. And if you have prolific antimony that could potentially come out of your gold mine, you're going to get billions of dollars that can come from government entities. And guess what? The same people that have attracted several $billions from these exact government entities, including the Pentagon, and a mixture of grants and loans under good terms, and they just went through all this process with Perpetua. You think they don't know who to call and say, hey, by the way, we just had finished our studies on the stibnite, on the antimony at Livengood. We got to get rolling on this thing. Can you spare an extra 500 million to get this thing accelerated? Because you're screwed. The whole country is at risk with our national security. They're funding a lot of different things like this, but this is a legit respected group. And so what I believe now with this recent breakout upwards in the gold price, I was waiting for that with that consolidation to see if we were going to have like a 6-9 month correction where we could have been able to buy certain things cheaper. I've always said my minimum area that I'm looking for on THM in the US side is $3 a share. I've showed the chart many times. It's just the top of a basic channel on a long-term chart. And, we're approaching, we're going to see resistance around 2, and it could take a little bit to get through the $2. It goes through the $2. I think it goes directly to 3. This happens with a lot of stocks, but in this case, that is, I believe, in its future. However, I have talked about the 2011 highs that were over $10 a share when gold was about half of the price that it is today. That was Tower Hill in 2011. So you're talking about 14 years ago. It's like silver in 1980. You think silver is not going back and above $50? You're crazy. It's going to fly above $50, and it's going to go somewhere in the range of $150 to $300 an ounce within 24 months. That's my silver call. I think I can make price predictions on a commodity, but not on a security, which is weird. But I'm just talking about referring to the technical trading of Tower Hill, looking at it from just taking an objective viewpoint. I've always said $3, but if it gets through that area, there is some resistance along the way, obviously, but not real resistance, not big resistance until it goes back to 10. So if that were to be the case, you're at $1.60 or so right now. You're essentially looking at 5.5, 6x, 6.25 times your money if it goes back to 10, which I now am convinced that's where this is going. It's not just going to be 3, but buying shares here, this is what I told everybody in the beginning, in the my friends, my premium and elite members. I said overload what you can get under 60, 65 cents, because with a $3 minimum target, I didn't even talk about that. I basically said when it gets to $2, sell a third, you have no principal risk left, and then you swing for the fences with the rest of it. And the fences are, yes, 10, but I believe that Tower Hill in time, I don't know how much time, but in time, Tower Hill has realistic potential. Let's call it by 2029, give it 3 years, 3.5 years, 2.5 years. International Tower Hill, if they're not bought out before that, could be a $25 to $50 per share stock. That's what I'm talking about here. And the downside risk at this point, with how developed this is, with the gold price where it is, it'll slow down, and it would correct if gold went back to 2,500. But this thing is coming from such an undervalued level after this 4-year bear market that we saw start in August of 2020. With the money that's involved in it, that's going to protect their investment. I love the risk reward here. And lastly, I'm just going to say, for those of you that are interested, the low-hanging fruit on predicting, gold prices, for example, that happened a couple of years ago. And I went through this series on Real Vision, investing in the minefield. And we had talked weekly, every 2 weeks at least, and watching the gold price, which I believe it was 2 years ago in a month and a half. It was actually December of 23 when gold hit an all-time high, but it was in the first few days of December. And I had explained to the interviewer, Roger Hurst, who's awesome and an economist, and basically, we've done a new video that's coming out, actually should be out this weekend or next week, that I'll share with you guys. But, he's asking me about what do we need? Where's gold going? And I said, what we need is a monthly close above 2,100, because that was the previous high. And I said, in fact, I want to see a monthly close above 2,200 just to be sure. So when we had that spike, sure enough, by the end of December, the monthly close was below 2,100. So I said, we didn't get it yet. And we would talk every 2 weeks, and it was like, right around that price. And I said, look, the real trigger to just really stack in is going to be on a monthly close above 2,200, which happened in the month of March 2024. And that's when gold went from 2,200 to where it is today, which is 600. But I had made a call at that time that once that trigger happened, when the close on the spot price of gold happened above 2,200, that we were going to at least 2,700 to 3,200 within 9 months, which is a pretty aggressive call for a metal like gold. Gold has been astounding in terms of how much it's risen in the last 20 months or so. But the reason I did that and said that and had confidence in that is because whenever you've had this sideways move and retests of highs, since 2011, Basically, we were going into a quadruple all-time high top breakout once we went through, like, call it 2150, whatever. I said 2200 to make me feel absolutely certain. Usually you don't get things that just go up 5 or 10% and then they fall back off. We had this happen back in the days in 2020 where I was talking about Bitcoin. And if you weren't, sold on it yet, I had been recommending it since $500 in 2016. When it was like 14,000 in 2020, I said, just go open an account at Coinbase or something, send some cash in there, and just have the thing approved and open so that when we break the late 17 highs of 20,000, that you can, as a, if you're a pro, that that is where you go into those trades on an all-time high when it, feverishly breaks through there. And I said, we're going to go to 27, 28,000 before it pauses. And I said within a few months, and it happened within a few weeks. So anyway, we're early. We're still very early. You haven't missed the boat in stuff like THM. If you don't have any, you have to have some. I don't like people like chasing stuff, but this thing has consolidated with higher highs, higher lows, slowly and up to the right. And it's really built for a sustainable long-term move higher. But you should get some on the books. And say the way that I play these type of things is like, okay, I want to have 100 grand in Tower Hill, or whatever. You could say $2,000, or you could say 20 million. I mean, you can actually do either in this deal because the liquidity is improving and it's getting bigger and bigger, and you could invest 10, 20 million bucks if you're a smaller hedge fund. But what I would say, let's use the 100 grand moniker. I'd put like 30, 40 to work right now at the market, not dicking around for like, a nickel pullback or something. Just get it on the books in case it keeps on rocking and accelerates, so you have some. But the rest of it, hope and pray that the thing has a violent pullback with the sector at some point. And even if it's from higher prices, you'll feel better about buying on the pullback. And if you buy 35, 40% of your position here, and then the stock goes from 160 down to 120 for a brief consolidation to shake the trees on the weak sister Johnny come latelys, you're going to be happy about it because you can actually put on more cheaper instead of like, oh, I'm an idiot and I chased it and Mashinsky's a charlatan. Okay. So anyway, I've got projections that I think gold is going to, silver, platinum, palladium. I'm going to save that for another video. We're going to get into that tonight on the Zoom call with elite and premium members. And please, like, if you like some of the stuff that I've done, even if you were a premium or an elite member in the past, and whether it was me and we had some shitty calls during a certain market or a bad market, or something happened with you where you just weren't as tightly involved, I think right now coming back, it's just it's a very, I've got a lot of confidence that people who take my guidance on ideas, buy up to prices, selling, how to sell, and just make sure you're covering your butt to come out of a big win environment where you make a lot of money, but don't ride it all the way back down. Right now, this environment is just perfect. I mean, you can come in for 6 months is the way we set it up on the premium, like $777. You could do the year, which is a discount to that. On elite, I raised the amount of people to 40. It's all accredited individuals. You get deal flow there for some of the miners and getting warrants, which is very, very attractive and important in this type of market. And we get some really good stuff. So socking away some warrants in a portfolio. I don't know what we're charging on elite. It's less than 10,000 a year, for the annual thing. But you also could do that, I believe, quarterly if you wanted to give it a shot. But I think if you give me 18 months or so, and if stuff doesn't, crush it, then say sayonara. But that's all I really need. I think right now, my challenge is I want more premium and elite members to come in because I'm just really confident that I can help make money for you. in this environment. And again, mainly a lot of that is just that I've identified that we're in a bull market and I know when to press and not to press. And right now is the time to press. So hopefully you join us. If you do join us right now before the next 5 hours, you can hit up Eric or Erica, Erika, at Phenom Ventures, and we can send you the link to tonight's Q&A, which is 6 p.m. Central for premium and elite members. And we're going to get into anything that you want to. That will be recorded though, so you'll get the recording if you can't make it right away. I would just encourage you guys though that are serious and want to make some real money and like this space, um, you know, come on in, get more involved. The free e-letter, I try to, pass along value with certain things. Like we just had the recommendation for the Palladium ETF a couple weeks ago at around 100, 101. That went to 110 really quickly, came back to 105. It's a strong buy. That's something that anybody could allocate to. It's not a small penny stock, even though that's more of my specialty. But everything in between, it's just that you get this stuff more often, you get updates more often, and you get information first. So sometimes that can come in very handy. Have a good night, guys. Cheers.